Hello and welcome into episode 18 of the Stomp the Bus podcast. I am your host, Mark Harris, riding solo today since Colton has some car issues. He'll be back on the show, presumably next episode. And we're coming after you after coming to you after an ASU win, their third win of the year. This time a 42-34 win over Colorado that I don't want to say it wasn't that close because ASU did have to get a few first downs at the end, but it really wasn't that close. ASU had firm control of this game throughout most of it. And Colorado wide receiver, what was his name? Jordan Tyson, who had a great game, takes a punt to the house. And that definitely made things a little more tense, at least for me when I was watching it. But it didn't ultimately matter because ASU found a way to win, get their third win of the year. Trenton Bourguet looked awesome, except for save for one pick on the outside that wasn't great. But I mean, let's see here: 435 yards, 3 touchdown passes. All went to Jalen Conyers, by the way, who had a great game. 8 catches. Oh no, I'm sorry. 6 catches, 108 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Bourguet. Oh my gosh, mispronouncing things today. Bourguet, 435 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. He looked good, and he needs to be the starter going forward. That's what Iguano said. Offense just runs better with him. And yes, it's against Washington and Colorado, but something tells me that if Bourguet was starting instead of Emory Jones against Stanford, they would have scored more than 14 points or even 17 points because they had to miss kick. They would have probably gotten in the 20s, and that would have been enough to win. So, I mean, who knows what the decision process was for starting Emory Jones against Stanford. But the fact that Bourguet has looked so good in 2 of the past 3 games that ASU has played, right? Seems like it hasn't been that much because there was a bye week thrown in there, but it's been 2 of their last 3 games he's played, and he's played very well in both games. So I expect to see him starting for the rest of the year. He throws a catchable ball, clearly. I mean, Elijah Badger, another just fantastic game. What else is new? 8 catches, 137 yards. Even our third receiver, Brian Thompson, 6 catches for 76 yards. Messiah Swinson, 3 catches for 55. Like spreading the ball around, focusing on the tight ends who both transferred in from, Conyers came from Oklahoma and Swinson came from Missouri. They didn't transfer in from Weber State, or I'm thinking of Jacksonville State. There's another random FCS school that I could think of at the top of my head. These guys transferred in from big schools, and it's hard for me to believe that they just incrementally improved so much only because they're playing Colorado. I think that speaks to Bourguet running the offense, having a better grasp on it. And just giving the big guys opportunities. I mean, I'm going to talk about UCLA. Their defense is not that great. Like ASU will be able to move the ball against UCLA, and I'm very interested to see how Bourguet handles it, because that'll be the best team he'll go up against, and the best defense as well. So, I'm just really encouraged by what I've seen from him. And it's at least something to hold on to as the season kind of winds down for ASU. Look, you beat Colorado, you got to 3-5. Losing to Colorado would have been, whatever the highest DEFCON is, or maybe it wouldn't have been because there's so many other bigger issues, but it would have been really bad. It would have been embarrassing. You don't want to lose to Colorado. So far, only Cal has done that, and Colorado, like you can see why they aren't. Their record is what it is, and I'll give them credit. Like the Buffs, you could tell they definitely came to play. Like they didn't mail it in. but it just wasn't enough. Their quarterback threw 2 touchdown passes, but went 13 of 34. So took advantage of the defense a little bit. Tamarcus Davis got beat bad. I think it was a corner route. I want to say at the end of the second half, and that was not a great moment for the defense. Yeah. With 3 minutes left in the second half, that made it 21-17 ASU. And that's the only real time in the game I thought that ASU actually was going to lose, or not going to lose. Ooh, ad plan. Don't want that. When he caught that was like a legitimate, like, oh, this could go wrong. But to ASU's credit, they went right down the field, 9 plays, 71 yards in just over 2 minutes, and Valde punched it in. So he had a great game too, 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. He continues to just be a really impactful 3 touchdowns. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, he had three rushing touchdowns for Valde and 3 receiving for Conyers. So really good game offensively. 42 points is 42 points, and they probably could have scored more if they wanted to. Defense, not the best game from the defense. They had a really good game against Stanford the week before, but not. I get that the last touchdown was a punt return, so effectively they allowed 27 points, but even giving up 27, still too much to Colorado. And they gave up 100-yard rusher and a 100-yard receiver. So, Colorado wasn't really ever threatening to actually win, but just too close. So, I thought the defense, individual guys played well. Cal Sawilli, I think I had another good game. Ro Torrance, I mean, I would not want to be a receiver going up against him, man. Like, he's just lengthy and he's fast enough. Not the number one quickest guy, but only some guys are going to be able to take advantage of that. So it's just, he's been a really good addition to this team. And he's only one corner, but it's been a good addition. And so we'll see what next year holds for him, but hey, he's playing well. And yeah, so look, it's Colorado. I mean, they're still probably the worst team in the league. Maybe they're playing a little bit better under interim head coach Mike Sanford Jr., but ASU just kind of did what they needed to do, really, to just avoid the embarrassment of losing to Colorado. I mean, it's already been a rough season. You just don't want there's no, we talked about this before, but there's no benefit to losing games in college football other than trying to get a coach fired. And that's already happened. So, and in terms of the AD getting fired, that's probably irrelevant to what happens on the football field from this point going forward. Obviously, the Eastern Michigan game couldn't have been great for Ulray Anderson, but so far Michael Crow hasn't made any official move. We'll see what happens in the coming weeks, but yeah, it's just encouraging, again, just to watch ASU be able to win a game. This felt a lot like the NAU game. I mean, obviously against a better team, but it felt like ASU was in control for the most part. And I don't know what this really shows about Iguano, because Iguano was calling plays. So, and hey, they moved the ball, they did a good job, but again, it's Colorado. That is a huge disclaimer that has to be made for this game. And it was a road win. I think if you're going to win a game on the road, it's going to be against Colorado. I thought that there was no chance they were going to beat Wazoo. I think it's in a few weeks on the road, but Wazoo just can't move the ball. So that game actually looks a little more winnable than I thought it would be. But yeah, so it's, we're still in the same boat, but at least you got 4 games left. I think the offense is at least going to be fun in these next 4 games. I don't see ASU getting drastically blown out going forward. UCLA could beat us by double digits. and 2 scores and win. In fact, that's what I think what's going to happen, but it won't be like 38-14 or something. I don't see that happening. I think Bourguet is too good of just too good, just knows too much about the offense. I mean, he's clearly just proven that he can move the ball, and I get that he's a walk-on, but maybe sometimes walk-ons can be really good. I mean, sometimes they look like walk-ons, but clearly he's playing too well for you to think, oh, they're going to get blown out the rest of the way. They may lose. I mean, there's a good chance they don't win another game this year. Although I think that's probably off the table. Just with the way Wazoo and U of A are playing, I find it hard to believe that ASU won't win one of those games. I feel like 4-8 is the most likely finish to this season, but 5-7 seems possible. And again, the fact that 5-7 seems possible highlights how big of a deal it was to lose the Stanford game, because that was a winnable game, as we all watched, and that could have got you to 6-6. So, small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. It's all about really finding the next head coach, waiting what's going to happen from the NCAA that just keeps to drag on and on and on. But that's where we're at right now. On to UCLA coming in. Bruins are 7-1, ranked 12th in the country. Their only loss was on the road at Oregon, so definitely a good loss in terms of college football terms. They've really played well after kind of a shaky start. Didn't have the best non-con schedule. In fact, they needed a last-second field goal to beat South Alabama at home. But since then, they've really only had one in Pac-12 play. 45 on Colorado, 40 on Washington, 42 on Utah. Lose 45-30 at Oregon. Beat Stanford 38-13. Like, their offense is rolling. Chip doesn't want to recruit at all, as shown by the early years of UCLA with his tenure, but he can coach offense like anyone. Dorian Thompson-Robinson having a fantastic year, and probably he was in the Heisman conversation before that loss to Oregon. So it's going to be a really tough matchup for ASU, and ASU's defense. It's tough to believe that like this is going to be the week where ASU's defense really clamps down and gets everything together. I just think UCLA is just too big of a too well coached. It's a very old team, and more experience always helps in college sports. DTR's been there for a while. I think this is 5th year there. Like, he's been there for a long time, and when he gets going, he can be really good. And but their defense is exploitable. Their defense is not unstoppable, especially that it'll be a game at Sun Devil Stadium. I think this will be a decently attended game. I think people, you're having a good team come in. The team is at least playing more excitingly with Bourguet. It's not going to be a packed house, but I could see maybe like a 65%, 70% type stadium. Better than we saw earlier this year, but still not where you want to be, obviously. So it's going to be tough. The odds makers have it as UCLA according to ESPN. They have it as they have UCLA favored by 11 points. Feels about right. That's a tough line, because I very much can see ASU being with them for a lot of the game, but just not being able to. I could see ASU losing like 32 or like 34, maybe like a 27-45 type of game. Maybe that's just with UCLA scoring at the end, kind of one of those games where like ASU it'll be a game at halftime, but they won't be able to. I just don't see them keeping up with UCLA's offense ultimately. So I definitely see them covering the spread, maybe backdoor, but I don't see them winning this game. I do think it is possible that they win this game, just because UCLA's defense is not that great. And I don't know. I just feel like there's some weird Pac-12 magic, whatever you want to call it, that just sometimes you have these, one-loss teams late in the year. They're going down to ASU or U of A even, and they lose to a team that's just not as good as them. We've seen it a lot in recent years. So maybe ASU wins based on that. I mean, I remember being there. I want to say it was either 2017 or 2018 when ASU beat Washington. And they beat them like 13. It was a really low scoring game, and Washington probably would have won if their kicker had made like some short yardage field goals. And of course, ASU and Manny Wilkins end up winning that game, and definitely the biggest upset I saw in person. But it was clear that Washington was the better team. They just didn't play well enough, and they didn't play a complete game to win. ASU was just the benefactor of that, and they obviously forced them to do that stuff too. But maybe they win like that. It won't be a low scoring game with UCLA, but you never know. The thing that really makes me kind of bristle at ASU winning, though, or not bristle, but just not expect them to win this game, is I think that ASU kind of pulled off its one home upset of the year, and that happened against UW a few weeks ago. So it'd be great if ASU won. I mean, this is probably the last time UCLA will come to Sun Devil Stadium in a long time, because they're going to the Big Ten. So it would be great to send them off, ruin their college football playoff hopes with a loss. And hey, if ASU win this game, I mean, then that is going to be huge for Iguano's case, huge for the potential of them making a bowl game, because that's UCLA is the toughest team left on ASU's schedule. Maybe you can't argue Oregon State. Oregon State's definitely the second toughest team, but UCLA would be number one. And, I just don't see it happening this weekend. I think UCLA is just gonna be too good on the ground. Zach Charbonnet is an awesome. He is so good. We talk about Valde being good, and Valde is good. Valde has 137 carries for 760 yards, 10 touchdowns. Good season. He's gonna have 1,000-yard season. Probably gonna have 15 touchdowns. But Zach Charbonnet, 128 carries, 964 yards, and 10 touchdowns in 8 games. That is ridiculous. That's averaging over 100 yards a game. Granted, UCLA did not play an Oklahoma State type team on the road this year, so that could have maybe impacted the disparity a little bit. But as good as Valde has been this year, Charbonnet is he's a really good runner, and he's tough to tackle. So that should be a fun matchup to watch, but it could be a very unfun matchup for ASU eventually in this game. So I'm excited to watch. I'm excited that this ASU team, even though they're losing, and I've repeated myself, but the fact that it's just kind of a more offensive team, it's just more fun to watch an offensive team if the team isn't that good. If the team's good, if ASU were 6-2 right now and they were playing like a better version of Iowa, where they muck it up and win games 20-13 all the time, then great. That would be awesome. But if ASU was doing that exact same thing and they were 3-5 like they are now, then no. So that's where we're at. I don't really have any, I guess in terms of coaching search stuff, there's a new job. Auburn finally fired Brian Harsin, and no, I do not want Brian Harsin to be the ASU head coach. I'm just going to say that right now. Didn't have a great recruiting strategy at Auburn, and there was also a lot of talk that he wasn't exactly the most understanding of what players were going through, and we don't need that. We need Iguano. I'd so much rather just keep Iguano than him. For me, Dion, I think is still number one. Dillingham hasn't done anything to, did they even play? I'm forgetting, did Oregon play? Oh, I think, they played at Cal. And Cal is a weird, Oregon's gone down there and lost. UW's gone down there and lost. It's just kind of a weird place to play. Wilcox is a good defensive mind, but Oregon, they they put up plenty of points. I think they got started a little slow, but eventually once they got rolling, Dillingham had his boy Bo Nix playing well, and they eventually beat Cal 42-24. Yeah. So another excellent game from Dillingham. You guys should check out the Wilner and Canzano podcast. Two Pac-12 journalists. They had Fox Sports color guy Brock Heward on, and obviously in the pre-show meetings, they talk with the coaches, talk with the players. Apparently, Brock really liked Dillingham, liked what he was about, and him at ASU, it would be a risk. He's young and he hasn't been a head coach before, but that guy knows offense. And if you're going to be an inexperienced head coach, I'd rather you be one that really can scheme it up, because that's already just such an advantage, even if the defense doesn't even improve from this year, just being able to, right, by regularly scoring 30 points and not having it be like, oh, they scored 30 points, like having it be kind of normal to do that, such an advantage for any college football team, but obviously for ASU as well. So that's kind of where I'm at in the coaching search. I don't really think Auburn's opening. I mean, maybe they'll get Deion Sanders. For some reason, I just don't think Auburn's going to get Deion Sanders. If they did, then hey, Auburn can pay more money than ASU can, and if Deion goes to Auburn, that's just how it's going to be. But and honestly, I don't expect ASU to get Deion Sanders. He's just my number one candidate, just because of how. And I know that he brings risk. Don't get me wrong, but I just think he could really inject a lot of attention and exposure for ASU, similar to the way Herm Edwards did, but just in a more, hey, this guy actually has coached college football recently and has been successful doing so. Oh, and by the way, he nabbed the number one recruit in the country to go to an FCS HBCU school. So clearly he knows what he's doing, coaching offense well down there at Jackson State. And he's also said he's considered Power 5 jobs. So Deion's out there, and we'll see what happens with ASU. I feel like the running favorites are one of Iguano or Dillingham. So I'd be, honestly, I would be open to those. Obviously Dillingham, but Iguano, I still would rather not. But worst case scenario, if it's him or like Bill O'Brien, I'd go with Iguano. So still 4 more games to be played. Still a lot of, backroom coaching search meetings and boosters, making sure that their bank accounts have enough to pay the next coach, and hopefully getting NIL stuff more squared away and all this stuff. Just eventually it'll all be solved. But right now we're still in the waiting game. So we'll see how it goes. But I would be fine with. I'm still hoping for Dillingham. But Iguano calling plays. The offense looked a lot better, so I'm a little bit more open to him than I was last week. But losing 15-14 to Stanford is still really bad. It's really bad, and I don't know. We'll see. I'm just a podcaster. I don't really know what I'm talking about anyway. So I do want to touch on one more thing. So since the last time I recorded, the Big 12 completed its media deal, It's really an extension. So their original deal goes through 2025, and this is on the Sports Business Journal. Halloween is when it was reported by John Arand. 6-year deals with ESPN and Fox Sports, worth 2.28 billion. And that's basically they get basically it pays them 300. I don't know totally how it works, but ultimately, the Big 12 schools will receive a little over $31 million per school as part of the deal, which that's good for the Big 12. I'm glad the Big 12 is sticking together. But as the article continues, it also says, quote, Pac-12 officials are optimistic they will be able to eclipse that figure. And it also said that Pac-12 officials' initial reaction when they heard of the news was relief. So that tells me that I don't think the Big 12 is taking any Pac-12 schools, it's been kind of reported and hinted at by John Wilner, Canzano, that ASU, or not ASU, the Pac-12 is really going to lean in with Amazon, and and the thinking there is if they go with them, then there'll be more money available to have the TV deal pay out more than $31 million, or if it's not more, it won't be like significantly less. And that's the thing. Like, let's say the Pac-12, it ends up being $30 million per school, which would be not great, honestly, but it also wouldn't be like, I just don't see a school completely unearthing so much of, what they do, their athletic identity, and move to the Big 12 if it's a difference in $1.6 million a year. It's probably not worth it. Just, I'm a little biased here, but if this happened, I wouldn't want ASU to just jump to the Big 12 for a marginal gain. USC and UCLA, they left because their TV payouts were going to get like doubled in the Big 10. They're getting crazy money per school there. So that's much different. No one's going to leave for a little bit more to just completely change everything about your school. And you have to remember these Pac-12 schools, specifically, U of A, there's a lot of rumors that they want to go. They get so many of their students from Southern California, just like ASU does. And so, sure, U of A going to the Big 12 would make it an awesome basketball league. It's already the best men's basketball league in the country. But adding U of A's brand would help. But it's like, okay, sure, that's great. But so many of our students come from San Diego and LA and the Inland Empire. Why, it's not worth it to make $1 million a year from our TV deal. So that's good. We don't know when it's going to be announced. There's some speculation that Kliavkoff is waiting officially until the Regents, California Board of Regents meets to discuss UCLA leaving. And I think that's sometime in the middle of the month. But to me, I know he has to wait to make sure that they say no. But it seems extremely unlikely that that's going to block them, UCLA from going to the Big 10, and they're stuck back in the Pac-12. I just don't see that happening. And that's why I think what's related to that is earlier this week, Canzano released an article about the Pac-12 and San Diego State being in talks. And, that would be, I think San Diego State is the obvious add to the Pac-12. And I don't think there are any other obvious adds, just because San Diego State, they're in Southern California. I get it. They're not in LA, but they're at least in Southern California in a big, San Diego's a big market. Their football team's good. they're not that good this year, but their football program has been very good in recent years. They've put guys in the NFL. They've beaten Pac-12 teams, as ASU fans know too well. And now they have a pretty good stadium, and their men's basketball program is really good too. So they make sense. Like it's not hard to envision them being a competent Power Five team. They have a pretty large enrollment, or large enough enrollment as well. So they would, I think they would fit. I don't think many people would be upset with them joining. But other than that, it's like Boise State or UNLV or SMU. You would only be adding them to get to 12, to get to an even number. So I just think, I don't think it's the worst idea to just be at 11 teams and have San Diego State in, and it's an odd number, but the Big Ten did that for years. Because when it was before, there was a time when the Big Ten, after they added Penn State, made it 11. And so that they had 11 teams, called themselves the Big Ten, but could do the same in the Pac-12, could make it the Pac-11, go to Pac-10, Pac-12, Pac-11. But other than that, it feels like San Diego State's been the only serious one considered. SMU would be interesting, but it just doesn't feel like they have some huge, not even huge, like even a marginal like grip on the attention of the DFW sports scene. So maybe they would have a little bit more if they went Power Five, but you still have TCU there. You still, I mean, Oklahoma fans are there, Texas fans are there, Texas Tech fans, Oklahoma State, like Arkansas fans, like there's fans of SEC schools. Like it's, one of the largest media markets in the country of all sorts of pro sports teams. I just don't see SMU being like some obvious answer, although I wouldn't hate it, but I would rather have SMU than UNLV. I'll say that, even though UNLV makes a little more geographic sense than they have the Raiders Stadium. They've just been so bad in football recently that it's hard to see. They could just be the worst team in the Power Five. So maybe they wouldn't if they were in the Pac-12. But there is another team or another school that's gotten some buzz about realignment, but they don't have a football program. Yesterday, it was reported by ESPN's Pete Thamel that Gonzaga has been in talks about potentially joining the Big 12. Obviously tough geographically. Their only real close team would be BYU. And I know people are saying, and I know it's like close in terms of the other schools, but Spokane to Provo is still not exactly that close. Even though they're in the western part of the country, it's still not that close to each other. But that would be really interesting. There have been other reports that have come out that Gonzaga has been in talks with the Pac-12 and the Big East about joining them. So clearly they are looking to get out of the West Coast Conference. Mark Few probably wants, more of a challenging season throughout the course of the entire season, which you can't really get in the West Coast Conference. They do play teams in the early part of this season, but many have speculated the fact that they don't have the full late season games against big schools has hurt them in the tournament. I kind of disagree with that because they've still made the title game twice, So how badly has it been hurting them if they've made the title game twice? I know they haven't won it, but I think one of their games was a really close game too. And so you tell me a few offensive rebounds here and there, and I get that it's a game of inches in sports, but anyway, that's a whole separate topic. But if the Big 12 does add Gonzaga, I think it'll be more like, I just don't, from what I've seen, it's not going to like totally affect the bottom line in terms of conference payouts. It would just make Big 12 basketball the clear and obvious best in the best in the country. You have the two most recent national championship winners. You have Texas Tech, who made the national championship a few years ago. You have schools like West Virginia, Kansas State, oh, or I guess not Oklahoma. Houston. I mean, Houston's made the Final Four. BYU, and you have just other schools like that. Iowa State, who are just like good, solid teams that are just tough to beat on their home court. It's college basketball, but I think I saw some reaction. I mean, Stuart Mandel of the Athletic said it would be colossal egg on the Pac-12's face if they let Gonzaga go, and I agree with that in terms of like a branding and maybe a narrative standpoint, but I just want to know how much of a monetary difference Gonzaga would make. And there's reports that Gonzaga doesn't want to go just as a basketball only member. And so then you have to have all the other sports in, and that adds more complications. And oh, by the way, Gonzaga, it's not like they have a football team either, right? So, excuse me, that is money being left on the table because their non-existent football team isn't bringing revenue in. So I don't know how it would actually work. I think it would be great if the Pac-12 could add Gonzaga as a basketball only member. But maybe the fact that that hasn't happened really anytime recently thinks that maybe it's just the logistical. It's not going to happen. Maybe Gonzaga wants to have all sports in. Pac-12 doesn't want that because one of those, they don't have football, and so it's not enough money that they're bringing. And maybe I mean, I'm sure if you're a Gonzaga fan, I know many Gonzaga fans, I really doubt that if they were moving to another conference, they would want to go, oh yeah, sure, it'd be great to go to the Big 12 in terms of competition. It's a better basketball league than the Pac-12, undoubtedly. But if you're a Gonzaga fan, many of whom live in the Seattle area and the Portland area, do you want all of your conference road games, to be basically in the Midwest, or even, it's Central Florida? Like, maybe Mark Few is just using the Big 12 as leverage to get to the Big East or the Pac-12. They should consider the Mountain West, honestly. I know the Mountain West isn't like a power basketball league, but there have been years they've put in like 4 teams of the tournament. Colorado State's a good program. I don't know, San Diego State, like I've talked about, they're a good program. I guess maybe San Diego State leads in the scenario, but I don't know. Just something I wanted to kind of touch on, but I don't know how much it really affects all that in terms of whenever the TV deal would be done. But I guess if you're an ASU fan, just to wrap this stuff up, I don't think, again, these are just opinions. I don't have any sources. This could all be wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think the threat of the Pac-12 blowing up in this round of negotiations, I think that's off the table. Now, 5 years from now, maybe the Big Ten looks at Oregon and Washington again, and if the Big Ten wants them, those 2 schools are gone, good as gone. In the same way that FSU and Clemson are good as gone to the SEC if they want to go. But it seems like that's a few years down the road. So we'll see how this deal goes. It's, if you keep up with Canzano and Wilner, it kind of seems like the end of the month we'll know something. So anyway, that's all for me today. Like and subscribe on YouTube, and comment and download on the podcast. We're on Apple and Spotify and all pretty much everywhere where people find podcasts. So yeah, and hopefully the next time I'm on, Colton will be able to join me. But until then, go Devils and beat UCLA this week. This has been Mark Harris on the Stomp the Bus podcast, and have a nice day. Bye.